Welcome to the debate. I want you to try something for me right off the bat. Close your eyes. Picture a perfect circle. No wobbles, no shaky lines, just absolute geometric perfection. Got it? Now open your eyes and look around the room you're in. Can you find one? A truly perfect circle in the physical world?
Well, I'm looking at my coffee mug right now, and the rim looks circular, but if I really scrutinize it, no, it has microscopic bumps. It's imperfect.
Exactly. You can see the imperfection because you have a standard of perfection in your mind. And that simple observation launches us into perhaps the oldest, most fundamental conflict in the history of human thought. Today, we are debating the nature of reality itself. Are we living in a world of pale imitations, where the real truth is hidden in an abstract, eternal realm? Or is this messy, jagged, coffee-stained reality the only thing that matters?
It really is the ultimate showdown. It asks, do we discover meaning that is already written in the fabric of the universe, or do we forge meaning, hammer and tongs, through the chaotic act of living? And since we have a lot of listeners today who might be new to the formal study of philosophy, we are going to break this down from first principles.
Right. We are grounding our exchange in the heavyweights. I will be representing the classical view, specifically Plato's rationalism. I am arguing that knowledge is actually the recollection of eternal truths, and that there is an objective, mind-independent reality, a blueprint, essentially, that we should strive to understand.
And I will be taking the side of the moderns, focusing on empiricism and existentialism. I'll be leaning heavily on Simone de Beauvoir later on. My core argument is simple. The blueprint is a myth. We are born as blank slates, and we create ourselves entirely through choice, sensory experience, and our collision with the physical world.
So, let's lay the foundation. The Platonic view is often dismissed today as mystical, but it's actually a rigorous attempt to save rationality. Plato looked at the physical world, what he called the world of becoming, and he saw a massive problem.
Let's define becoming versus being for the audience, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Crucially distinct, becoming is the world of the senses. It is everything you see, touch, smell, and taste. Plato noted that this material world is constant flux. The philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "You cannot step into the same river twice. The water flows, the banks erode, everything in our physical world is rotting, growing, shifting."
Which makes it inherently hard to pin down.
It makes it impossible to truly know. If I say that flower is beautiful, and tomorrow the flower is dead and brown, was my statement true? Plato argues that you cannot have knowledge with a capital K of things that change. You can only have opinion. If we want absolute truth, we have to look for the things that do not change, the things that possess being.
And this is where you introduce the forms.
Yes, the forms. Or the essence. The form of the circle, the form of justice, the form of the good. These are not physical objects sitting in a museum somewhere. They are the eternal, non-physical blueprints that physical things merely imitate. A physical chair is just a shadowy, imperfect copy of the form of the chair. And here is where I stake my claim. We human beings are not blank slates. Our souls are immortal. Before we were born, we communed with these forms.
So you are really going with the prenatal knowledge theory? That is a bold stance to defend today.
I am. Plato calls it anamnesias, unforgetting. Think about it. We don't learn that 2 + 2 = 4 in the same way we learn a friend's telephone number. Mathematical truths feel fundamentally different. We recall them. We recognize the truth because we have seen it before. We aren't filling an empty vessel. We are waking up from a nap.
Okay, I have to jump in here because while that is incredibly poetic, it feels incredibly convenient. It is a sophisticated way to bypass the actual struggle of existence. I'm arguing for the empiricist view, which relies on the concept of the tabula rasa, or the blank slate. When we are born, the lights turn on, and there is absolutely nothing on the hard drive. Zero.
So where does knowledge come from if the drive is completely empty?
Friction, bumping into walls, feeling heat, tasting sour milk. We build our understanding of the world entirely through sensory experience. You dismiss the material world as just flux or opinion, but I would argue that the material world is the only data set we actually have. This idea that we have a soul that floated around in a heaven of perfect triangles before birth, it's unnecessary mythology.
But if you only have sensory data, how do you ever arrive at abstract concepts? You can see a just act or a circular object, but you never see justice or circularity itself. Yet we all know what they are.
We construct them. We see 1,000 round things, and our brain averages them out into a concept of a circle. We don't need a past life for that. We just need basic pattern recognition. And this leads directly into the existentialist view. If there is no preloaded software in our minds, then there is no inherent essence to human beings. Simone de Beauvoir is the key figure here. She argues famously that existence precedes essence.
Meaning what exactly for the layman?
Meaning we show up first. We exist. And then we define who we are through our actions. We aren't uncovering a script written by a divine architect. We are writing the script in real time.
That sounds liberating on the surface, but I actually find it terrifying. If existence precedes essence, then we have no compass. We have no true north to walk toward.
But let's dig into the mechanics of how we actually know things first. You mentioned you value sensory experience. Plato would say that relying on your eyes and ears is exactly what keeps you ignorant.
Ignorant? That is a bit harsh.
Perhaps, but consider his allegory of the cave. It's the centerpiece of his work, The Republic. Plato describes prisoners who have been chained inside a dark cave since childhood. Their heads are fixed forward. Behind them is a fire, and people are walking past the fire carrying objects. The prisoners only see the shadows of these objects cast on the cave wall.
Right, and they think the shadows are reality. Exactly. They name the shadows. They develop entire sciences about the shadows. Look, that long shadow is coming back. But they are engaging entirely with illusions. The true philosopher is the one who breaks the chains, turns around, and painfully crawls up out of the cave, past the fire, and into the sunlight. The sun represents the good and the forms. It is blinding at first. It physically hurts to leave the comfortable darkness. But once you see the sun, you realize the shadows were nothing.
It is a powerful image, I'll give you that, but I want to heavily challenge the geography of that story. Plato puts truth outside the physical world. He puts it up in the sun, completely away from the cave of human life. He suggests that to know reality, we have to escape reality. You're telling listeners that the smell of their child's hair, the feeling of cold rain on their face, the pain of a heartbreak, that these are just shadows to be transcended.
Aren't they? I mean, they are fleeting. They pass.
They are life. Plato talks about the realm of forms as colorless, shapeless, and intangible. That sounds sterile to me. It sounds like a hospital waiting room. Knowledge shouldn't be about escaping to a colorless vacuum. It should be about navigating the color and chaos of the here and now. If I know what a triangle is, it is not because my soul remembers it from a past life. It is because I have seen slices of pizza and yield signs, and my brain has successfully categorized that sensory data.
But how can you categorize the data if you don't already have the category? This is the classic chicken and the egg problem. If you see a slice of pizza and you recognize it as triangular, you are comparing it to a standard of triangleness that you already mentally hold. If you didn't have the form of a triangle in your mind, the pizza would just be a meaningless blob of color.
The standard is language and social conditioning. We teach children shapes. We give them the categories. It is not hardware. It is software we install. And this brings me to a critical pivot point in our debate. You are obsessed with being, the static, eternal state, where a triangle is always a triangle. But I want to shift the focus to Beauvoir and the concept of becoming.
Go on.
Plato wants a reality that is what it is without deviation. But human beings are not triangles. As Beauvoir wrote in The Second Sex, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman.
That is a line often quoted, but rarely unpacked properly.
She means that woman is not a fixed form or an essence that you are born with. It is a social construct, a situation, a history that you grow into or that you resist. Beauvoir critiques the idea of the self as a fixed object. She talks about reading her old diaries and feeling like she was looking at mummies of dead selves.
That is a haunting phrase. Mummies of dead selves.
It really is. She realized that the self isn't a statue hidden inside you waiting to be uncovered. It is a living activity. It is a verb, not a noun. If you try to pin a human being down to a static essence like you are a warrior or you are a mother, you are actually killing what makes them human. You are denying their fundamental capacity to change.
I do see the appeal of that fluidity, truly, but I have to push back hard on the consequences of that view. If everything is just becoming, if there is no essence, no fundamental definition of what a human should be, then life has no target. It has no teleology, no ultimate purpose.
Why do we need a predetermined target?
Because without a target, how do we aim? Plato provides the blueprint. Without the one, the essence, to make sense of the many, our chaotic lived experiences, we are just drifting. If I don't know what the form of a human is, how can I possibly know if I am being a good human?
But we aren't abstract souls floating in a void looking for a blueprint. Beauvoir argues for the situated subject. We are situated in a physical body, in a specific time, in a specific history. You cannot divorce philosophy from personal life choices. Look at Beauvoir's own life. Her refusal to marry Jean-Paul Sartre, her refusal to have children.
Highly controversial choices at the time.
Radical choices. But she wasn't rejecting the form of the wife. She was making a concrete choice to maintain her personal freedom. She didn't look for a template, she created her own way of being. She embedded her philosophy directly into her personal relationships and her politics.
But did she create something good? And if so, how do you define good without a form of the good? This leads us directly to the final and most crucial segment of our discussion, the problem of truth. Objectivism versus relativism. We need to define what truth actually means for the audience here.
The big one. Let's do it.
In the ancient world, Protagoras the sophist claimed that man is the measure of all things. That is pure relativism. It implies that truth is whatever you individually perceive it to be. If the wind feels cold to you, it is cold. If it feels warm to me, it is warm. Plato rejects this entirely. Objectivism means that truth exists independently of our opinions or feelings.
But isn't the wind example actually true? It is cold to me and warm to you. Subjective experience is real.
For basic sensation, maybe, but not for reality itself. Consider the shape of the earth analogy found in the literature. Ancient cultures disagreed wildly. Some thought it was a flat disk, others a drum, or resting on a turtle's back. Now, does the fact that they disagreed mean the earth had no shape, or that it had every shape simultaneously?
Obviously not. It has a specific physical shape.
Exactly. Just because people disagree or measure things differently does not prove that truth is subjective. It just means some people are factually wrong. The earth is a sphere, regardless of what anyone thinks. Truth is mind independent. And Plato applies this exact same objective standard not just to rocks and planets, but to abstract concepts like justice and goodness.
That is a compelling argument when talking about rocks or planets. But when we talk about human truth, politics, history, social dynamics, I think we need to look at the modern relativistic challenge. I want to bring in the philosopher Slavoj Žižek here.
The psychoanalyst?
The very same. Žižek argues that the big other, which is the guarantor of objective meaning, is barred, or essentially non-existent.
Explain the big other for us.
It is the conceptual entity that ensures the rules of reality are followed and inherently meaningful. It could be God, it could be the state, it could be scientific consensus, or in your case, the forms. It is the cosmic referee. Žižek argues that in the modern world, we have collectively realized the referee isn't watching. The big other doesn't exist to validate our truth.
That sounds dangerously close to pure nihilism.
It is not nihilism. It is nuance. Žižek suggests that truth isn't just a neutral, objective fact sitting out there waiting to be discovered. Truth is engaged and partisan.
Partisan truth? That sounds entirely like a justification for propaganda.
Think of it like a labor strike. A neutral observer, maybe a platonic observer, looking for the objective form of labor, might just see a work stoppage. They see the dry facts, 500 people are not operating machinery. But the actual truth of the situation depends heavily on where you stand. To the striking worker, the truth is exploitation being actively resisted. To the factory owner, the truth is a breach of contract. Zizek argues that the subjective truth, the view from inside the struggle, reveals far more about reality than the dry, neutral facts. The gap or fissure in reality is where the actual truth lives.
But that is incredibly dangerous
Why?
because it opens the door completely to sophistry. If there is no big other, no objective form, then truth becomes nothing more than a function of power. It becomes whoever can argue the most persuasively or whoever has the biggest megaphone. Plato's theory of forms is a bulwark against manipulation. It protects truth from being twisted by demagogues who want to make the subjective truth of their specific political movement the only accepted reality.
And I would counter that claiming to possess absolute truth is the ultimate power move. Historically, the people who claim to have a direct line to the objective form of the good are the ones burning heretics at the stake. Because, well, the truth demands it. But let's take this to its most important practical conclusion. Moral truth versus concrete responsibility. If you believe in these abstract forms, how do you actually live your life?
You live by striving to understand the form of the good. For Plato, the good life isn't a matter of personal taste. It is a matter of profound knowledge. Morality is objective. Who is to say what is right? The expert, the philosopher who has ascended from the cave and studied the unchanging nature of the human soul. It is not about how you feel about an action. It is about whether the action inherently aligns with what is universally true.
That is incredibly elitist. It removes the burden of moral creation from the individual entirely. Don't worry about the ethical dilemma, just ask the philosopher king. Contrast that directly with Beauvoir's ethics of ambiguity.
Ambiguity is rarely a solid foundation for building an ethical system.
It is the only honest one we have. Beauvoir argues that we don't look up to abstract forms for morality. We look directly at our concrete actions. Because there is no God and no forms to undo our actions or guarantee their ultimate meaning, we bear total, crushing responsibility for what we do.
But responsibility to what standard? If I create my own values from scratch, can't I just create a value system where murder is perfectly fine?
No, because of the inherent logic of freedom. Beauvoir discusses this at length. She says, we cannot not act. Even doing nothing is a choice. But my freedom fundamentally depends on the freedom of others.
Explain that connection. Why should I care about your freedom if I am simply creating my own essence?
Because if I treat you like a thing, if I enslave or oppress you, I am validating a world where human beings can be treated as objects. Eventually, that logic turns back on me. Oppression isn't a theoretical problem or some abstract failure to align with a perfect form of justice. It is a concrete physical blocking of human freedom.
Give me a specific example from the source material.
Beauvoir analyzed the lived experience of Jamila Boupasha. She was an Algerian woman who was brutally tortured by French soldiers during the Algerian War. Beauvoir didn't condemn the torture because it somehow violated an abstract form of justice floating in the ether. She condemned it because it violently denied the open future of the victim. It turned a free human subject into a broken object. It closed off her possibilities in the real world.
That is a powerful, visceral example. But I have to ask you, without an objective, universal standard of good, why is closing off someone's future inherently wrong? You are smuggling in an objective standard, the idea that freedom is universally good, while simultaneously denying that you are doing so. You absolutely need the form of justice to make that condemnation stick logically. Otherwise, it is just your subjective preference for freedom pitted against the oppressor's subjective preference for control.
It is not a mere preference. It is the ontological condition of our existence. We are all thrown into this physical world together. Beauvoir emphasizes the bodily, lived experience. It discloses our ambiguity, our mutual vulnerability. We treat people ethically because we share this fragile, situated existence, not because we memorize the static definition of justice from a cosmic textbook.
And yet, without that universal definition, human history shows we are endlessly capable of rationalizing terrible cruelty based on our situations. If morality is based purely on situation, situations inevitably change. The form of the good does not change.
And human history also heavily shows we are capable of terrible cruelty in the name of absolute truth. The truth has a massive historical body count.
That, I will concede, is a fair historical point. We are coming to the end of our time today, and the philosophical chasm remains as wide as ever.
It certainly does. So let's recap the core of the debate for the listeners.
The Platonic view offers a world where truth is permanent, reliable, and ultimately knowable by the intellect. It attempts to save us from the chaos of mere opinion and the instability of the physical world. It offers us a solid foundation in the eternal, and it asks us to remember the objective truth of what is good.
And the existentialist and empirical view demands that we face the profound ambiguity of existence without those theoretical crutches. It asks us to accept that we're not born with a predetermined purpose, but must actively create one. It demands we take full, unwavering responsibility for our concrete actions and their direct impact on others, right here in this messy physical world.
Interestingly, both sides are fundamentally seeking a rigorous foundation for how to live. Even if the methods are entirely opposed, we leave you, the listener, to reflect on this. Are we better served by looking for a universal blueprint, the forms, to guide our lives?
Or are we better served by accepting that we are the architects ourselves, and the blueprint is being drawn line by line, choice by choice?
Are you a discoverer of truth?
Or a creator of it?
Thank you for listening to The Debate.